Welcome back to The Explainer. So today we're tackling a huge one, a theory that basically says everything we think we know about human origins might be wrong. We're talking about a story that comes from texts thousands of years older than the Bible, and here's the kicker. It suggests our most sacred stories, they might just be a copy of something much, much older and frankly, a lot more shocking.
So let's just jump right in with a really provocative question. Imagine for a second that the most famous stories from the Bible, creation, the Great Flood, the whole Adam and Eve thing, what if they weren't original? What if they were actually borrowed from a source that's way, way older?
Now, to get to the bottom of this, our story doesn't actually start in ancient Sumeria. Nope, it starts way more recently, in 1896, with a highly respected American scholar. And this guy noticed something. Well, something deeply unsettling in the ancient texts he was poring over.
And this is the man, Nathaniel Schmidt. He was an absolute expert in his field, a top academic. But here's the important part. He was also a devout man of faith, a Baptist minister. And that's what makes this so crazy. His commitment to just following where the text led, well, it brought him to a conclusion so radical for his time that it literally cost him his entire career.
So what did he find? Well, Schmidt realized that the stories of Adam and Eve, Noah's Ark, the Tower of Babel, they all had these jaw-dropping parallels in Sumerian texts that were written thousands of years earlier. Now, you got to remember, this is the 1890s. The religious establishment was already battling Darwin's theory of evolution. So for Schmidt to come along and say this, it was pure heresy. It basically suggested the Bible wasn't this unique divine revelation, but maybe a secondhand story.
Okay, but wait a second. How could Schmidt even read these super ancient stories in the first place? Good question. His whole controversial theory was only possible because of a massive, monumental breakthrough, one that basically opened a window straight into the lost world of Mesopotamia.
You see, for centuries, archaeologists had been digging up these clay tablets covered in weird markings. They were just unreadable curiosities sitting in museums. But then, thanks to absolute pioneers like Henry Rawlinson, who managed to crack the cuneiform code, it's like a lost civilization finally started to speak after millennia of silence. And let me tell you, the stories it had to share, they were about to change everything. And here is the crucial twist in the whole tale. When scholars finally read the original versions of these stories, the source material, if you will, the main character wasn't a single all-powerful god. No. The stories were about a whole group of powerful beings who, get this, came from the sky. And they were called the Anunnaki.
Okay, so this is where our story takes a really sharp turn. We're moving from history and linguistics into something else. And this is thanks in large part to an author named Zecharia Sitchin. He looked at all these same texts and came up with an interpretation that wasn't really about mythology at all. It was about technology.
So Sitchin looked at the name Anunnaki and said, hey, this isn't some metaphor. He translated it very literally as those who from heaven to earth came. Now, I gotta be clear here. Most mainstream scholars don't agree. They prefer translation like those of royal blood. But Sitchin, he was absolutely adamant. He said these weren't just myths. This was a literal history of extraterrestrial visitors.
I mean, just look at the Great Flood story. When you put them side by side, it's kind of undeniable. The plot is exactly the same. A group of powerful beings decides to wipe out humanity. One of them feels bad and secretly warns a mortal guy. He tells him to build a big boat to save himself, his family, and the animals. It's the same story beat for beat. The only thing that changes are the names of the characters. And this whole idea gets another boost from a really fascinating linguistic clue right there in the Bible itself. The word that gets translated as God in the creation story is Elohim. And here's the thing. In ancient Hebrew, that's a plural noun. It means the powerful ones or the mighty ones. That's why the text in Genesis literally says, "Let us make mankind in our image." Us, our, plural. It really does hint at a group of creators, not just a single being.
All right, let's keep building this case. The next piece of evidence comes from one of the most straight-up, baffling artifacts ever dug out of the ground, the Sumerian king list. Now, on the surface, it just looks like a list of kings and how long they ruled. But when you look at the numbers, their reigns are, well, they're completely impossible.
So the list claims that before the Great Flood happened, the very first dynasty of kings, they ruled for a combined total of 241,000 years. Let that sink in. 241,000 years.
And get this, that entire quarter-million-year period was covered by the reigns of just 8 kings. Do the math. It just doesn't work for normal human lifespans. Not even close.
So yeah, the average reign for one of these pre-flood kings was over 30,000 years. But then, and this is the crazy part, the list continues after the flood. And suddenly, the reigns of the kings drop down to totally normal lengths, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. So the people who support this Anunnaki theory say, look, this isn't symbolic. They argue it's a literal record of two different types of beings ruling the planet, one with these impossibly long lifespans, and then us, humans.
Okay, so if we entertain this idea for a minute, if these super long-lived, powerful beings were really here, what in the world were they doing? Well, the theory proposes a model for what they were up to, and it's a pattern that might sound eerily familiar.
This whole playbook, it looks a heck of a lot like human colonialism, doesn't it? The theory goes that the Anunnaki came to Earth to mine for resources, maybe valuable minerals like gold. And to get the work done, they needed a labor force. So they took a native primate that was already here and, well, upgraded its genetics with their own to create a brand new worker species. Us, Homo sapiens.
And when you look at it through this lens, other stories suddenly click into place in a new way. Take the Tower of Babel. In this view, it wasn't about humans arrogantly trying to build a tower to some metaphorical heaven. The original Sumerian version actually describes it as a kind of facility, a place for launching things or people into space. It was a technology project, not a religious one.
But, the story isn't quite as simple as just masters and slaves. The Sumerian texts actually describe a really deep conflict, a major disagreement within the Anunnaki leadership about what to do with us, their creation.
And right at the center of this drama were two half-brothers. You had Enlil, the commander, the CEO type. He saw humans as just a workforce to be managed. But then you had Enki, the chief scientist, the one who actually engineered us. He saw us more like his own children. And their conflict came to a head with the Great Flood. It was Enlil who ordered our destruction, but it was Enki who secretly went behind his back to warn the human Atrahasis and make sure we survive.
In this idea, this sense of a struggle over our own potential, it seems to echo throughout so many ancient cultures, all over the world. You find all these traditions, from the Greek mystery schools to Aboriginal ceremonies, and they all seem to have rituals designed to do one thing: reawaken some kind of higher state of consciousness. It's almost as if our ancestors had this collective memory that we were once capable of so much more, but that something or someone had limited us. And this is where the theory comes crashing right into our world, right now. Because if any of this holds even a sliver of truth, you have to ask, how much of our society today, our 9-to-5 jobs, the way we structure our economies, our hierarchies, how much of that is just a leftover relic of that original programming for servitude? And maybe the bigger question is, what would it even look like to break free from that programming?
And that's really the final mind-bending thought we'll leave you with. The Anunnaki hypothesis isn't just about ancient aliens. It suggests that maybe we aren't just evolved apes, that maybe we're a hybrid species, a unique blend of our earthly origins and a forgotten cosmic heritage, and that maybe, just maybe, we're still caught in that ancient struggle between the limitations that were put on us and a potential that is, quite literally, out of this world.